Paul, close your eyes. Mindfulness and stress. We are here being mindful right now. I am Dr. Brad Weening.
I'm Dr. Paul Zalzo.
And I am Dr. Amanda Marrone.
Thank you for joining us, Amanda. Today we're going to be talking about stress and mindfulness and how to manage it. If you have a comment, please leave it down below, as this is something that is pervasive in our society. We're going to try to give you some strategies to maybe just reduce it a little bit.
Even if you don't have a comment, leave a comment. No, wait.
For funsies.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right.
What are we talking about? When we're talking about mindfulness and stress reduction, or anxiety even for that matter. What are we talking about?
So mindfulness is a practice that it was developed by Jon Kabat-Zinn, and he defined mindfulness as basically, being aware. So it's awareness and presence in the present moment without judgment.
Yes.
So when it comes to stress, I think I've said this before, we as humans just don't like to be uncomfortable. But we have to remember that the stress response is, again, I've talked about our caveman brains. Mm-hmm. It goes back to our days of our caveman. Cave person. Yes, I'm sorry. Cave person. Right. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So it goes back to those times when, we were wired for reproduction and survival. So two areas of our brain really dominated. We had the pleasure center, which we've talked about before. That's the nucleus accumbens. But we also have the amygdala. And we also know this as the fight or flight or freeze center, right? So, if you were kind of doing your thing as a cave person and all of a sudden a saber-toothed tiger started chasing you, your fight or flight center would say, that's a threat, you gotta get out of here. And it would release this flood of different neurochemicals than the pleasure center. You're not relaxed and feeling good. You are like, bang, go. So your heart starts racing, your eyes dilate, your lungs start, working faster, so you can move and get out, or you can fight, or you freeze so that it doesn't notice you, right? So one of those reactions happen. And so this kept you alive. And it still keeps us alive today. So you're walking down the street and you're going into traffic, boom, if a car's coming, you want that stress response so you can jolt back quickly. So the fight or flight response is actually super helpful in keeping us alive. The problem is our cave person brains do not know the difference between, the saber-toothed tiger chasing you and a pile of work that you have to get
Real or perceived threat.
Real or perceived threat. We don't know the difference, so the same response happens. So what's happening is our brains, when it comes to chronic stress, are constantly being bombarded with these fight or flight chemicals. Right. So that's why stress is, what I call one of the most underrated health hazards of the 21st century, because it increases these surge of hormones that keep us alive in the short term, but in the long term, when we are super secreting cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and adrenaline, it raises our blood pressure, it stresses our heart.
Raises our blood sugars.
It raises our blood sugars, and it causes inflammation in our body, which can lead to things like cancer. So stress is a problem. And when I'm, talking to patients, I'll say, what brings you ease to your body? And they'll say, time with friends, a good sleep,
walk in the forest.
I'm like, right, okay, so think about those things. None of them have to do with pills or procedures, right? And they're like, oh, right, yeah. And then I say, okay, let's add a prefix to it. Dis-ease. Dis-ease.
I see what we're doing here.
You know what I'm doing here, right? Maybe you can have a word underneath.
That's going to slowly come.
Yeah, so you can add that to your...
It took me a while, but I got it.
Yeah.
Dis-ease. So adding the prefix dis means to move away from, right? The opposite of. So when you're not fostering the things that bring ease to your life, or when you're chronically stressed, you can and will get, maybe you can make a little word that it can match my hands, but disease, right?
Okay, love it.
So again, I'm not that smart. I heard this in a TED Talk and I was blown away by this concept because I never thought about the word disease. I used it a billion times in my medical training and practice, but I never understood the concept.
Lack of ease.
So lack of ease is dis-ease. And so that also includes physical ease and spiritual ease. These are other pillars of health. But from a mindful perspective, it's stress. So stress can cause disease. There's actually a disease. Right. Takotsubo's cardiomyopathy is a perfect example. This is a person who actually presents to a hospital with chest pain, symptoms of a heart attack, right? And they do blood work. There's hormones level are rising in showing a heart attack. The ECG looks like they're having a heart attack. But when they actually go in the vessel and look, the vessels are clear. It's and it's often more often in women, and it's usually after a stressful event.
Right.
So like often like a widow will come in after losing her husband. She's been very stressed and she has this happen. And the heart is actually in spasm. It's diseased because of stress alone. So our minds and bodies are connected. So that's where, if our minds and bodies are connected with stress, we also have to use our minds to release the stress.
And I think historically, traditional medicine didn't really acknowledge stress as being like a thing. They're like, oh, you're stressed. In the 80s, it was like, here, have a benzodiazepine and go do your best. But now I think we recognize that there are very measurable problems caused by chronic stress.
Absolutely. And we know that things like counseling and mindfulness have as good an impact as the medications for chronic stress and chronic disease and chronic depression and anxiety. So it's not to say that you can't use medications. And again, if you are on a medication, you do not stop your medication. Right. But you want to add things, right? Yeah. Lifestyle medicine doesn't replace conventional medicine, but it can add things to conventional medicine to perhaps lower your dose, or maybe someday come off of your medication, but always under the advice of your doctor.
Right.
So like even things like breathing, right?
Absolutely, right? So pausing. Breathing, again, slows down those neurochemicals. It slows down your heart rate. It triggers your vagus nerve, which is your rest and digest, your relaxation, your parasympathetic nervous system. And that's what you need to combat the stress or the sympathetic nerve.
And don't be stressed about being stressed. That often gets people stressed. And stress, now you've heard this, that stress is bad for you, so you're going to be stressed out about being stressed. These are some tactics you can use to help you reduce that stress, which is closely linked to the actual physical aspects of your body.
Right, and that's where mindfulness plays a huge role. And when it comes to stress and worry, I'm going to mention him because this is where I learned a lot of this information, is Dr. Judd Brewer. I want to give kudos to where it came from. He wrote a great book. If you suffer from anxiety, he wrote an amazing book called Unwinding Anxiety. Maybe you can put a link down there. Again, I have no affiliation with him other than I think he's the bomb. Okay. And so he wrote a book, and what I learned, and this was actually important for me because I have anxiety. I've suffered from anxiety. I'm a stressed person. It's kind of like, I got it from my mother. She's, I love her, but she's just a worrier. We're Italian. We worry about everything, right? So I had to use these principles. And what I learned, which was insane to me, was that worry is actually a habit loop. We do it to feel better. Remember, we always want to feel better. It's like, what's better for us? So when we have an uncomfortable feeling, it's usually rooted in fear, right? We're afraid of something. Yeah. And on the hierarchy of feelings, fear is worse than worry, because worry is a habit you use to actually make you feel like you're doing something about this uncomfortable feeling. Remember, we always like to do things as opposed to just being with that uncomfortable feeling. And so what Dr. Brewer suggests is just to kind of pause and then, receive what that, feeling is. Okay, I feel, and label it like, I feel, I feel fear, I'm worried, I'm stressed about this particular thing. And then don't judge it, don't try to get rid of it, but feel like curious about it. Say, okay, what's this feeling like in my body? And that brings you back to your body, which is mindfulness.
Right.
So are you feeling tightness? I'm feeling, sweaty. I feel my heart racing. But do it in a curious way. Like, oh, that's strange. Here it is. And when you do that, it actually starts to decrease your anxiety. It actually reduces it because you're not trying to get rid of it.
It's like taking some of the power away from the anxiety.
There's something we say in mindfulness is what you resist persists. So the more you're trying to get rid of something, the more it's going to be in your face, and it's going to kind of make you feel worse. So when you kind of just roll with it, and that's actually huge. And then doing things like meditation is very important. So meditating is it could be something as simple as breathing, like you said. Deep breath in, hold it for 4 seconds, deep breath out, just to slow things down. And we know from studies that meditation actually makes your amygdala, your fight or flight center, smaller, and the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of your brain, actually gets bigger. So it actually structurally can change your brain.
Does your head look funny after that? Okay.
Not really.
Thanks for sharing your personal experience with anxiety. What was the single most sort of mindfulness type tactic that you did that you think helped the most? If someone's only going to remember one, like me. No, I'll try to remember them all.
I think I had to understand that life isn't without struggle. Right. And there is some discomfort in life. And again, this doesn't go for people who've been through trauma, people who have had really traumatic experiences. To be alone in their bodies, and that is actually really uncomfortable, and you need to do those activities and exercises with a trained trauma therapist. But for people who've not experienced trauma but just are stressed all the time, I think it's important to remember that we are human. We're going to feel stress, but it's okay to feel uncomfortable for a bit. It will pass. And just be grateful. So gratitude practice is something I have found really made a difference for me, is saying, okay, I'm worrying about stuff that's happening that hasn't even happened yet. Yeah. What do I have around me that makes me feel like I'm okay right now? What am I grateful for? And there's always something to be grateful for.
Attitude of gratitude.
Attitude of
Love
gratitude.
Well, thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Wow, that was fast. He's a quick study.
He's good.
So validation of what you're going through seems to be one of the most important things that can help you keep it at bay.
Yeah, and approaching it with curiosity, not with this air of like, I got to get rid of this awful feeling and I got to do something about it. Just sit with it, recognize how it's feeling in your bodies.
Yeah.
And then it helps you to release it, and then practicing, calming techniques and breathing techniques.
Kind of like, I didn't know I could sweat that much.
Yeah, there you go. Wow, look at my body.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing that wisdom with us. And remember, if you have been through a traumatic experience or you're having a reactive sort of traumatic anxiety, then please get some help. See someone, a professional. Who, there is help. That's beyond the scope of this video, but for the average person, in the absence of that massive traumatic event in your life, this might be helpful for you.
And know that your boss is not a saber-toothed tiger. Or your kids.
Unless you work at the zoo or something. But if you like this video, please like it, subscribe to our channel, and if you have strategies that have worked for you, please share them down below, because other people definitely are always looking for help in this area.
Yeah, and people do find a lot of comfort when they read other people's comments that said, look, I've been going through this, and you guarantee you someone else has gone through the same thing.
Yeah.
So definitely share down below and answer each other's comments too, if you feel like it.
Can we go back to meditating now?
There you go.
I'm not stressed anymore after that.
Amazing.
I'm real curious though. Remember, you are in charge of your own health.
We'll see you next time.